Hello and welcome to another video from Trench Raider. I hope everyone had a good Christmas break and New Year, and now that we're back in full flow in 2019, everyone that received Battlefield 5 for their Christmas presents is familiarising themselves with the game, hopefully enjoying it. And today what I'm looking to do is to bring some tips and thoughts around the game of Domination in Battlefield 5 specifically. With it being quite close to the start of the new year, lots of new players from Christmas arriving into the game, I thought it would be a really good idea to talk a bit about helping players out, familiarising themselves with the game, and in particular this game mode. Domination, especially in Battlefield 5, I find really quite interesting, especially with some of the controversy that we've had recently with the time to kill and time to die ratios. And some of you may not even be aware that that's something that's actually taken place within the game, and a bit of a fallout with regards to the developers' viewpoint on this, and then changing their mind and sort of reverting back. But essentially a lot of people, some people I should say, were struggling with the game in terms of how quickly it took to kill someone else, and how long it took for someone else to kill you, essentially. And the ratios, some people weren't particularly happy about. A lot of players that have played Battlefield for a very long time, and the many different versions and iterations that we've had over the years, were quite comfortable. And being that Battlefield is traditionally very much a community-based game, happy to say that DICE, the developer, and EA in their involvement actually listened, and they've reverted things back. So now that we've got that out of the way, we can perhaps dive a bit deeper into the topic and the conversation that I wanted to discuss today in this video. So I think Domination is an interesting game, tying into some of the things that I've mentioned before about time to kill and time to die. It's a very fast-paced game. The maps are a lot smaller than they are in other game modes, like Conquest, for example, or Ground Operations, to name just a couple. And I think Domination is a good way to get into this game. I use it personally to sort of warm up, if you like. It's a good way to sort of get your bearings, get a feel for how you're going to play that day. Start sort of honing in on your aiming skills and your reaction times and reaction speeds. All of these different things, your awareness, can help you really sharpen up your skills and hone your skills. Equally, because of the pace of the game, it can be quite brutal, especially with the time to kill values that we've mentioned before and touched on. And I do personally feel that they're a little bit more sensitive perhaps than they were in Battlefield 1, for example, if you're familiar and played that game, being that you do potentially die a little quicker than you would have previously done. And if you're not careful, you can quickly find yourself dying more than you're killing. So Domination's an interesting one because it's very fast-paced. You do have to be careful, yet you've also got to play quite aggressively to make a name for yourself in a game. And that means moving around quickly. It means actually trying to take the objectives, which is ultimately the purpose of the game. But obviously keep your wits about you so that you don't end up dying all over the place. So let's talk about some key points within the game of Domination that I think is worth raising. Key differences, first and foremost, for those that are completely new to the series of Battlefield, but played games such as Call of Duty previously. There's obviously big differences. Yes, they're first-person shooters. Yes, certainly the synergy with the two latest releases between each games at the moment being that they're focused around World War II in these particular editions. But they're very different. If you haven't already recognised and realised, Battlefield is not quite as arcade-like Call of Duty perhaps could be claimed. It's more than just a run, point and shoot shooting game. You do have to be more tactical. You've got to be more strategic. You need to think about where you are in relation to the map and in relation to what actions actually taking place around you. your teammates play much more of a key role, and that's without going into the whole vehicle aspect and demolition aspect, which we can leave out for the purpose of this video. But the main objective of Domination, clearly it will explain it to you the first time you launch it, but just to cover it off, is that you have 3 main flags and objectives to actually capture as part of your team, and the purpose of which is to capture those and hold those for as long as possible. But as I mentioned before at the start of the video, the pace of this game is a lot faster than you'll find in the traditional conquest mode. The maps are a lot smaller and tighter, and also there are differences in terms of how long it takes for you to capture a particular flag and equally lose it. So the whole premise of the game is much more fast-paced and makes for quite an aggressive style of play by nature, in my opinion, because you can quickly lose flags, but you've obviously got to move fast to capture them fast. So it can make some real good enemy engagements, some real good firefights. I really enjoy it. It's very fast-paced, very fun, but you certainly have to think about a few things, and we can cover these off through the video. We've mentioned before the sort of controversies around time to kill and time to death. I think it's worth just highlighting again that with these slight changes and in sensitivity between Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, with Domination lending itself to encouraging you to play a bit more aggressively, I do believe that one thing that you have to keep in the back of your mind when you play this game mode is the fact that it's incredibly easy to die, and in maps that have a lot of open spaces, you should be thinking about cover. Whenever you encounter an open space and your intentions are to cross it, think twice. Look where you are. If there's cover, if there's buildings that you can use, if there's another path to getting to that point on the map that you're looking to get to, maybe you should be taking that alternative. Maybe some things that sway you in that decision are that you're with a lot of teammates and they're all running across an open space. Well, maybe that gives you a bit more cover, maybe that gives you a bit more support to actually make that more direct run, to the point of the map that you're trying to get to. But you should be very conscious of the fact that it's incredibly easy to die. The turnover rate is high in this particular mode of Domination. So keep your wits about you. Look on the map as you're making moves, see if anyone's been spotted, look and observe where your teammates are firing. All of these things give you clues about where action is taking place, and therefore you can plan your movements accordingly. Make sure that you're getting the most out of the moves that you're making and the approaches to certain flags that you might want to take. Now, that being said, things like taking cover, one little tip that I've found, and I know that other people have been showing videos alike around this, is going prone. In this particular version of Battlefield 5, you can go prone in multiple different directions. So previously, in most first-person shooting games, you can go prone simply, lying on your belly, for an example, and firing some shots off as you lie down. In Battlefield 5, what they've done is allowed you to actually, fall and take a prone position in multiple different directions, and that's really useful. So for example, you could lie on your back and fire off some rounds from that position. And what I've found, at least for the moment, is a lot of opposition players, when you're in that position on your back, maybe even on your side, it seems to fool some players. They kind of feel that you're already dead. Start playing around with that. I found it does actually work. It's a really useful approach. When the time calls for it, of course, but I found that can be quite useful. The other thing that's worth mentioning is class type suitability. You've got your 4 classes in Battlefield: medic, assault, sniper, and so on. And all of those have their own traits. They've obviously all got their own types of weaponry that they're able to utilise and grow within the game through upgrades. And I find that all of these different classes have their own roles and responsibilities. Clearly, medic is a very obvious one in the recovery of teammates across the board. Whereas supplying ammo might be another one that's easy to recognise. But when it comes to playing some of these classes in some of these game modes, some are more suited than others. You've already touched on the fact that Domination is quite an aggressive mode of play. It's fast-paced, you have to move around quickly, the enemy is moving around quickly, you're gonna die, at some point, that's a guarantee. But equally, you should be making a lot of kills in the same instance as you move around the map. But some classes are better suited to this game mode than others, just by way of what weaponry they have available to them. And one slight difference, in my opinion, between Battlefield 5 and the previous Battlefield 1 in particular, is Sniper. This particular class, in my opinion, is the weakest of the four at the minute. In terms of its capabilities and disparity between Battlefield 1, I feel that there were certain configurations of the guns that you could have in Battlefield 1 that still catered for short range. I, for one, used to have quite a short scope set up, and I could quite happily play Team Deathmatch and Domination with a sniper, still rack up, still play aggressively, still move without having to sort of start and stop around the map. And I feel like that's not quite the same in this game. Unless you're getting headshots all the time, you're probably going to do some damage, but you'll find it will be sort of 70-80%. And by the time you realise that, and the only reason you realise that is because you're dead already, they've been able to retaliate, and you can see how much life they've got left. So just think carefully about when you're playing Domination. It's good to warm up for certain classes, better for some, and maybe worse for some others. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. If you're dying a lot and you're trying to sort of camp out a bit as a sniper in Domination, I'm not really going to be that surprised, if I'm honest. The other thing that's worth mentioning is, and this is actually a tip, in my opinion, across the board for any game mode that you're looking at, is just be conscious and try and learn as much as you can from the information that's being fed to you by the game. Look at the maps. Underneath the time counter at the top of the screen there, you can see that the first two flags are actually being dominated by the opposition. But you can also see and recognise when some flags are under contention and when flags are actually changing hands. And information like that, just a quick peek, absorb that information, it can be really valuable in terms of what flag you should be looking to go for, or your teammates should be looking to go for next. Because there is sometimes pattern in certain maps of teammates sticking together, going in a cycle, if you like, from one flag to another, and you can kind of follow that pattern with your team if you wanted to, or if you're really aggressive, of course, you can take that information, see which flag is under contention, and actually maybe cut back across a map to contend with those enemy soldiers that are actually looking to take the flag that belongs to you at that point in time. So you can use that, in other words, to gauge whether you're actually going to hit heavy engagement with enemy opposition or maybe light. Maybe they've just taken a flag. Clearly, in this game it's so fast paced, you're not going to find many people sitting around, I wouldn't have thought, on a flag that they've captured. They're going to, by design, if they're playing it properly, going to want to move on to new flags. And the last thing to mention is about reloading. Think carefully about where you're actually planning to reload. In between your engagements, take cover when you reload. Make sure that you're not in line of sight of anyone, especially snipers if they're playing this particular game of Domination. And just reload carefully. That's something that you just have to make sure throughout any game mode, especially Domination, you are careful about your visibility. Anyway, I hope you found some of these points useful and entertaining. There's lots of talking points in this particular game mode. Style of play, time to kill, time to death are still hot topics, and you may or may not be a fan of these. Let me know your thoughts below. In summary then, Domination can be really damaging, but also a great place to learn and build your reflexes and reaction speeds. It's a very fast-paced game, so lots of kills and deaths are likely if you haven't already noticed. But as you play and start to master this game mode, I find it's a great way to warm up for a serious game of Conquest. I hope you found some of these points useful, entertaining, lots of talking points in this particular game mode. Style of play comes into it, time to kill and time to death, as we mentioned before, are still hot topics, and you may or may not be a fan of these. Anyway, that's enough from me with regards to Domination. Hope you've all found this really useful and entertaining. There's some useful tips in this video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more great content on its way. But for now, goodbye, and thanks for watching.